I never imagined that a peaceful day at the beach could alter everything. But then I spotted my aunt standing there all by herself, and something shifted between us. What began as a random encounter quickly evolved into an unexpected experience. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, we had crossed a boundary that would forever change our lives. As I strolled along the secluded beach, I felt the sun's warmth on my skin. With each step, my feet sank into the soft sand. The soothing sound of waves crashing against the shore created a calming rhythm, allowing me to appreciate the stunning surroundings. The beach was empty, just how I preferred it. A perfect getaway where I could be alone with my thoughts. I hadn't planned on meeting anyone today, but as I walked further down the shoreline, I spotted a figure standing by the water's edge, gazing at the horizon. It was my Aunt Lydia, who, at 62, carried herself with such elegance and poise that she appeared much younger. I hadn't anticipated seeing her here, especially not alone. We had always shared a close bond, engaging in deep discussions about life, love, and everything in between. However, there was something different about witnessing her in this serene setting. Just the two of us, with no distractions and no one else around. As I approached her, she turned and smiled, her eyes sparkling with a hint of something I hadn't noticed before, an indescribable quality that intrigued me. She wore a light sundress, and the breeze played with the fabric, accentuating her beauty in a way that was hard to overlook. I tried to avert my gaze, but her presence was captivating, drawing me in. "What a surprise to see you here," she said, her voice soft yet playful. "I didn't expect to find anyone out here today," I replied, standing beside her, looking out at the endless expanse of blue. "It's such a tranquil spot." She nodded, her gaze locked onto mine. "I come here when I need to think, when I want to clear my mind. It's my escape from everything." A moment of silence fell between us, the only sound being the waves lapping gently at the shore. I felt an unspoken tension building, as if we were both anticipating something that was both unvoiced and undeniable. "I've missed our conversations," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been far too long since we've spent time together." I nodded, echoing her sentiment. "Yeah, I've missed them too. You always have a way of offering perspective." She smiled at that, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Without thinking, I reached out and touched her arm. A simple gesture meant to comfort. But the instant my skin brushed against hers, everything changed. The air around us felt charged, and I became acutely aware of every detail. The warmth of her skin, the slight hitch in her breath, and how her lips parted just a little. Her eyes were locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw a longing reflected back at me, a desire that mirrored my own. The world around us faded away, and all I could focus on was her. The closeness of her body, the pleading look in her eyes urging me to make a move. I didn't think about it. I just acted. I stepped closer, closing the gap between us, my hands sliding up her arm to rest gently on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into my touch, her body gravitating toward mine. I could feel her warmth, the rise and fall of her chest with each breath, and the slight tremor in her hands as she reached up to touch my face. Her fingers traced the line of my jaw, and I leaned into her touch, my heart racing. The tension between us grew to an almost unbearable level, and in that moment, I realized there was no turning back. Whatever was happening between us, we could no longer deny it. I leaned in, my lips brushing against hers softly at first, testing the waters. Her lips were warm and inviting, and when we finally connected, it felt like a spark ignited between us. She responded immediately, wrapping her arms around my neck and pulling me closer, deepening the kiss. The kiss intensified, becoming more passionate and urgent, as if we were making up for all the moments we had shared yet never crossed that line. I could feel her hands tangling in my hair, drawing me closer, and I reciprocated by sliding my hands down her back, exploring the curves of her body through the thin fabric of her dress. We broke apart momentarily, both of us breathing heavily. Her eyes were dark with desire, and her lips were slightly swollen from the fervor of our kiss. I sensed hesitation lingering there, but it was quickly overshadowed by something primal and raw. "I've wanted this for so long," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the waves. "But I never thought it would happen." "Me too," I admitted, cupping her face in my hand as I leaned in to kiss her again. This time there was no hesitation, no holding back. We both understood what we wanted and were done pretending otherwise. Our bodies moved in perfect harmony, the tension between us giving way to something far more intense and intimate. I felt her hands exploring me, touching me, and I mirrored her actions, my fingers trailing along her curves, feeling the softness of her skin and how she shivered under my touch. She pulled me down onto the sand, her body pressed against mine, our lips locked together, and the warmth of her skin against me was intoxicating. As we lay there, surrounded by the crashing waves, time seemed to freeze. In that moment, there was nothing else in the world but us, lost in each other, wrapped up in the intensity of our connection. Every kiss, every touch felt like a new adventure. A new way to connect with her on a deeper level unfolded before me. I could sense the heat between us intensifying as our bodies pressed together, and the desire became almost overwhelming. Her hands roamed across my chest and back, pulling me closer as if she never wanted to let go. I was completely immersed in her presence. The way she moved, how she felt against me, and the rapid rise and fall of her breath with each fleeting moment. I didn't want this to end. I wanted to savor every second, every touch, every kiss. I slowed down, pulling back slightly to meet her gaze. She looked up at me, her chest rising and falling quickly, her lips parting as she caught her breath. In that moment, she was so stunning, vulnerable yet incredibly powerful. "I can't believe this is really happening," she murmured, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my chest. "It feels like a dream." I smiled and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "If it is, then I never want to wake up." Her smile widened, and she pulled me down for another kiss, her lips soft and inviting as her body arched against mine, inviting me to continue our exploration. The intensity between us escalated once more, the heat building to a fever pitch. Yet we didn't rush. We took our time, relishing every moment, every kiss, every touch. Her fingers glided down my back, sending shivers coursing through me, and I reciprocated by running my hands along her sides, feeling the smoothness of her skin and how she trembled at my touch. There was something intoxicating about her response. Her body craved mine just as much as I longed for hers. Each moment stretched on, each one more intense than the last. Our kisses grew more passionate, each touch became more intimate, and we were lost in one another, enveloped in the overwhelming desire that had been simmering for so long. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the beach, we finally surrendered to everything we had been holding back. The world around us faded away, leaving only the two of us entwined, lost in the depth of the moment. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Raw, passionate, and perfect. The way her body moved against mine, the way she gasped with each caress and kiss, felt as though we were completely in sync. Two halves of a whole finally coming together. And as night fell, with stars twinkling above us, we lay wrapped in each other's arms, the warmth of our bodies keeping the cool night air at bay. There were no more words to be spoken, no need for conversation. Everything we had ever wanted to express had already been conveyed in our moments of intimacy, in the way our bodies had connected, finally giving in to the desire that had simmered between us for so long. It was a moment I knew I would cherish forever, a moment that had transformed everything between us. As we held each other close, I couldn't help but wonder where this path might lead and what the future held for us. But in that instant, none of it mattered. All that mattered was her and how she made me feel alive, whole, and completely lost in love. We lay there on the soft sand, the outside world fading further away with every passing second. The rhythmic crashing of the waves mirrored the beating of my heart, but my entire focus remained on her, on the way her body felt against mine and the intensity in her eyes as she regarded me like I was the only person who had ever mattered. Her fingers traced gentle patterns on my chest, barely grazing my skin, yet each touch sent ripples of heat coursing through me. I could feel the electricity between us growing stronger, building up inside me to the point of almost being unbearable. I longed to get lost in her again, to experience that connection that was deeper than anything I had ever known. At the same time, I wanted to savor every second of this moment, which felt both inevitable and forbidden. "You have no idea how long I've wanted this," she whispered, her voice low and husky, her breath warm against my neck, her lips tantalizingly close to my skin. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of her words wash over me. There was something in her tone, the rawness of it, that sparked something deep within me. My hand slid down the curve of her back, feeling her muscles tense under my touch, the way she reacted even to the lightest caress. "I think I know," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, my hand resting at the small of her back. I felt it too. She offered a soft, knowing smile before leaning in and pressing her lips to mine. The kiss was slow and unhurried, yet there was an underlying urgency that neither of us could ignore. Her hands wove through my hair, pulling me closer and deepening the kiss. I could feel the heat radiating from her body as she molded herself to me, fitting perfectly as if she had always belonged there. My hand slid lower, my fingers grazing the curve of her hip, and she let out a soft moan against my lips, arching her body into mine. The sound she made, the way she responded to each caress and kiss drove me wild. I craved to hear more, to feel more, to make her lose herself in the moment, just as I was. My hands explored her body, memorizing every curve and contour, as if I were discovering something entirely new. With each touch, her fingers trailed down my chest, slow and deliberate, sending a rush of heat through me that I couldn't contain. She was teasing and exploring, and every move she made seemed to heighten the tension between us, stretching it like a taut string ready to snap. "I've always admired you," she murmured between kisses, her breath warm against my lips, "but I never thought it would feel like this." I could feel the sincerity in her words, the raw honesty that made my heart race even faster. My hands slid up her thighs, feeling her warm, soft skin beneath my fingers. She trembled slightly, her breath catching in her throat as I pulled her even closer. "You're driving me crazy," I admitted, my voice rough, barely able to contain the need that surged within me. I was so close to losing control, but I didn't want to rush this. I wanted to make it last and to ensure she felt every moment as intensely as I did. She flashed that familiar knowing smile, her lips barely grazing my jaw as she softly whispered, "Good." With that simple word, she shifted her position, straddling me and pressing her body against mine, causing my heart to race. Her hands found a resting place on my chest, and as she leaned down, her lips brushed the sensitive skin of my neck. The sensation overwhelmed me, and I couldn't help but shiver at her touch. A low groan escaped my lips as my hands instinctively gripped her hips, feeling her move against me, slowly and deliberately, teasing me with every motion. Her body felt incredibly close and warm, and I sensed the tension building once again, this time stronger and more urgent. Yet she was in charge now, and I could tell she wasn't quite ready to let go. She wanted to stretch this out, to draw out every second of pleasure, and I was more than willing to follow her lead. Her lips traced a path down my neck, planting kisses along my collarbone, and I tilted my head back to grant her more access. Every kiss, every caress ignited a fire across my skin, and my body responded instinctively. She was expertly navigating this, knowing precisely how to push me to the brink without letting me tumble over. My hands slid up her sides, and I felt her breath hitch as I touched her, her body trembling in anticipation. She was intoxicatingly close, and I couldn't resist pulling her down for another kiss. This kiss was charged with intensity, more demanding, and she responded with equal urgency, gripping my shoulders as if she intended to hold on forever. "I want you," she breathed, her lips almost touching mine, her warm breath mingling with my own. "But not yet. Not until we've both had our fill." The thrill of her words sent a shiver of anticipation coursing through me, and I nodded, my hands returning to her hips, drawing her nearer. "Take your time," I murmured, my voice rough with desire. "I'm not going anywhere." She smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes, and I felt my heart race even faster. As she teased me with her movements, pressing her body so closely to mine that I could feel the heat radiating from her, we fell into a natural rhythm. Every touch, every kiss, every deliberate movement was infused with a tension that felt almost unbearable. But neither of us was eager to rush. We were both enjoying this moment, stretching it out for as long as we could. We both understood that once we crossed that final threshold, there would be no turning back. Her hands glided down my chest again, exploring and teasing, and I could feel my breath quickening. The tension grew stronger with each second, teetering on the brink of losing control, yet I held back, not wanting to let it go just yet. She leaned closer, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered, "I want you to experience everything, every touch, every kiss. I want this to be unforgettable." Her words crashed over me like a tidal wave of desire, and I tightened my grip on her hips, pulling her even closer. "I already won't forget," I replied, my voice barely audible as my hands slid up her back. "I won't ever forget this." Her body pressed against mine, and I felt her slight tremor, her breaths coming in quick, shallow bursts. It was clear she was as affected as I was, igniting another wave of heat within me. The tension escalated again, stronger and more urgent this time, and I knew we were both on the edge of something explosive. Still, we didn't rush. We kept moving together, deliberately savoring every touch, every kiss, every lingering moment. The intensity between us was nearly overwhelming, but neither of us wanted to stop. Time stretched out, with each minute feeling more intense than the last. Every kiss grew more passionate, every touch more intimate. As the tension reached a breaking point, I could feel her body trembling against mine, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as she clung to me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we surrendered completely. The world around us faded away, leaving just the two of us immersed in the intensity of the moment. Our bodies found their rhythm, moving together in perfect harmony as we let go of everything we had held back. It was more than I had ever imagined. The way she felt, the way she moved, the profound connection we shared. It was flawless in every aspect. The tension that had built for so long finally shattered, and we both embraced the raw, overpowering desire that had been simmering beneath the surface for too long. As we reached our climax together, it felt like the world exploded in a kaleidoscope of sensations. Time stood still, and all I could feel was her body, her warmth, her love. Everything else faded into nothingness, and we became completely absorbed in each other. When it was over, we lay breathless, our bodies entwined, the sound of the waves crashing in the background being the only interruption of the silence. I gazed into her eyes, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. Everything had been conveyed in the connection we had forged, in how we had surrendered to one another completely. "I never thought," she started, her voice a soft whisper as her fingers traced gentle circles on my chest. "Me neither," I responded, drawing her closer, my heart still racing from the intensity of what we had just experienced. But as we lay there, the reality of our actions began to sink in. We had crossed a line, one that neither of us had expected to breach. And now that we had, there was no going back. "I don't want this to end," she whispered, her voice soft and vulnerable. I held her tightly, feeling the weight of her words settle between us, knowing we had both ventured into something irrevocable. That reality lingered, but so did the undeniable connection we had shared, something neither of us could erase. We remained wrapped in each other's arms, cherishing the tranquil aftermath of a moment we had never envisioned yet had always desired. "It doesn't have to," I whispered, gently brushing my fingers across her cheek, fully aware that everything had transformed forever. And as the waves continued their rhythmic dance upon the shore, we both understood this was merely the beginning.